if Biden wins, China will own America. He's going to own it. First of all, they pay him a fortune, so you know why wouldn't he? Works for China, basically. He works for China.
Wow. Okay. Then President Donald Trump on the campaign trail in 2020, accusing his opponent without evidence of receiving payments from China. But a new report from House Democrats alleges it was Trump's businesses receiving Chinese money while Trump was in office. So interesting. According to the report, of the nearly $8 million paid to Trump's businesses from foreign countries between 2017 and 2019, $5.5 million came from China. Joining us now, one of the authors of that report, ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's just start with some basic civics and understanding of why we have certain rules and regulations and a constitution. What is the risk of a president receiving money from foreign nations?
Well, the founders of our Constitution were terrified that presidents or other federal officials or members of Congress would sell out the American national interests simply by receiving money from foreign governments and doing their bidding. And Donald Trump has fulfilled the worst fears and nightmares of the founders. The $7.8 million that we were able to document in receipts from foreign nations, China and Saudi Arabia being the two leading countries, are just scratch the surface of what is certainly much broader money coming in, because it was only for a 2-year period out of his 4-year presidency. It related only to 4 of Trump's more than 500 businesses. We were able to get the receipts for the Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, the Trump International Tower, UN Plaza in D.C., the Trump International Hotel, and in Las Vegas, the Trump International Hotel. But most of them we still don't have. And we also were only able to look at 20 countries out of 195 on Earth. So this is likely to be just a fraction of what he took. But still, the founders of our country would be absolutely scandalized, as would be every other president we've ever had in American history. The report talks about, in one part I write about Abraham Lincoln, who received 2 elephant tusks that he really liked from Siam. And during the Civil War, he sent them to Congress saying, can I keep these? He did what was constitutionally necessary, which is to go to Congress if you're going to keep any kind of payment at all, any kind of gift at all from a foreign government. And Congress actually said, no, you've got to turn those over to the Department of the Interior, which he promptly did. Donald Trump has obviously been the reverse. It was a money-making operation from the beginning, and we're just starting to find the millions and millions of dollars that he collected from government. So I just anticipate one objection, because I know the Trump family's out there saying, well, he didn't take his salary of $400,000 a year. That's all you're allowed to take. The framers set up a system, and it's in the Constitution, that the only thing that the president can take is his salary from Americans. So you're not being bankrolled by Saudi monarchs and by Chinese communist bureaucrats.
Yeah, and as you said, from Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the Constitution forbids the president to accept money payments or gifts of any kind whatever from foreign governments. So what's the consequence?
Well, here's the problem. They've sandbagged us for 7 years. This report is the culmination of 7 years' effort that began with my late beloved colleague, Elijah Cummings, who recognized the danger immediately when Donald Trump refused to divest himself of the businesses that he had when he came into office. And he knew it would be a problem. We had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. In the Mazars litigation, we finally got information in September of 2022. But the moment that Chairman Comer became chairman of the Oversight Committee, he told Trump's lawyers to tell Mazars, don't worry about it. You don't have to turn over any more information to the committee, which is why we just have this snapshot. But clearly what needs to happen, if we're going to be dealing potentially with presidents like Donald Trump ever again, and let's hope not, is we need a mandatory reporting regime where if you get any money from any foreign government of any kind, whatever, as you quoted from the Constitution, you must immediately immediately report it to the Congress of the United States. And then we need an internal mechanism within Congress where it's heard within 10 days or 2 weeks. It goes to the floor of the House. It goes to the floor of the Senate, and Congress votes. And we also need penalties for presidents who think that they're just going to be able to pocket the millions of dollars from the princes and kings and dictators of the world and not tell anybody about it and then just fight about it later in court. We need public officials who are going to be faithful to the constitutional design.
Congressman, good morning. Good to see you. What you have here in this report is evidence that Donald Trump and his family profited from his time in political office. That, of course, is the argument that your Republican colleagues have tried to make about the Biden family, suggesting that Joe Biden's family profited while he was in office, perhaps more as when he was vice president. But they have yet to provide any concrete evidence that that was the case. So we can't underline that clear. You've got evidence there. They yet have not. So just give us, if you will, your reaction now, your feelings as the Republicans, despite this, are barreling forward with their investigations and talk of potentially even impeachment of President Biden.
Well, I want to believe the best of my colleagues. And I thought, although, they have a partisan lens on, they were really interested in the question of public corruption and people selling out the American public interest to foreign governments, all to line their own pockets. And here we have documented receipts of that taking place during the Trump administration, and they simply turn a blind eye to it. And, they're saying absolutely ridiculous stuff like, well, he didn't take his salary in office, or, well, when this was first raised, they gave some of the, quote, profits back to the U.S. Treasury. The Constitution doesn't say you can't keep the profits from foreign governments. It says you can't take any payments at all of any kind, whatever, from foreign governments. And if you think that you want to keep 90 or 95% of it and give a couple $100,000 back, go to Congress and ask Congress if that plan is okay, like President Lincoln did, or like President Kennedy did when he was given Irish citizenship. That wasn't even money, but even then he said he would have to decline it out of deference not to the letter, but to the spirit of the Foreign Emoluments Clause. Barack Obama gave $1.3 million from a Nobel Peace Prize back to a Swedish government-related entity. He didn't have to, but again, he said out of a superabundance of caution towards the Emoluments Clause, he would. And here we have Trump just pocketing millions of dollars directly from some of the most corrupt regimes on earth that were looking for particular things. And he continues just to go on his merry way. He should give that $7.8 million back immediately to the U.S. government, to the U.S. Treasury, and then the Republicans should support us in passing very strict laws that will prevent any president, a Republican like Trump or a Democrat or an independent, from ever doing anything like this again. Because what we're talking about is the national security. If you read our report, you will look at places where the money coming in from these foreign governments definitely influenced what Donald Trump was doing with respect to China and some of the corruption taking place there with respect to Saudi Arabia. Remember, he helped cover up the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist who was assassinated. All of these things taking place with people who are putting money into Donald Trump's pockets.
And you mentioned he should return the money. Of course, he should do a lot of things. But is there any way to actually make that happen?
Well, we're hoping that we will turn up the heat in terms of the public conversation. But remember, because no president has ever come remotely close to doing anything like what we now know Donald Trump did, we do not have the laws in place, the legal mechanisms to force him to give us that money. But certainly we're hoping that public pressure will accomplish that. But the real thing is we need a bipartisan determination to pass real laws that will keep public officials from completely ripping off the taxpayers and defeating the constitutional design. Our founders did not want presidents loyal to and jumping at the beck and call of foreign dictators. They wanted presidents who were going to be loyal in a fiduciary sense to the American people.
So many precedents and norms broken. Ranking member, and here's yet another on the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Thank you very much for all of your work, and thanks for coming in this morning.